close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
You know, I love that opening so much because I get to watch my guest in the green room here smiles. I go, oh gosh, you're talking about me? Of course I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the other guests, not you. Doug Crow, welcome to the Author Your Brand Show, where you're going to want to take notes. And today we've got a guest on. He's an award-winning author, teacher, trainer, very experienced as a mediator. And his work carries on from international work to helping people resolve deep interpersonal ideological conflicts to training life inmates to be peacekeepers and mediators in maximum security prisons. Oof. His fourth book, De-Escalate, How to Calm an Angry Person in 90 Seconds or Less, that's not with a shiv, was published by Beyond Word Publishing in September 2017. It's now in 4 languages and it's second printing. He's a co-founder of Prison of Peace and creator of the Noll Effect labeling system. In 2012, he was honored by California Lawyer Magazine as California's Attorney of the Year. So without further ado, let's welcome to the show today, Douglas Noll, which has a wonderful first name, of course. We love that.
Absolutely.
Back to you, Doug.
I'm doing well. How are you today?
Doing great, thank you.
Good.
So we got like 20, 25 minutes to chit chat about your amazing background, your book, whatnot, but why should people listen to us today?
Because I'm going to show you how to stop all fights and arguments in your life forever with 3 simple steps. So stay tuned because you're going to learn how to do that.
All right. I was just going to Dale Carnegie, like, just don't start one. It's just like, you know, but anyway, I want to hear your method. Before we get into that method, though, I want to hear more about how you got into this work, working in prisons with inmates. That sounds fascinating. How'd you get involved with that?
My colleague and partner, Laurel Coffer, received a letter from a woman who was serving a life sentence in the largest, most violent women's prison in the world, which at that time was Valley State Prison for Women in Chowchilla, California, back in 2009.
Okay.
And since I live about an hour from the prison and Laurel lives down in Los Angeles, she called me and read the letter to me and said, what do you think? And I said, I think we should do this. Yeah. So it took us about 6 months to get permission to start, but we started in April of 2010 with 15 women, all serving life sentences or long-term sentences. Yeah. And that's how Prison of Peace began. And we designed the curriculum for inmates, people who are incarcerated, with our understanding that they probably had no skills at all. And so we started from ground zero, and over the course, in those days, it was compressed into about a 16-week course. Today, it's much longer. Yeah. We taught them over 200 skills in 16 weeks to turn them from nothing to powerful peacemakers and mediators. And 2.5 years later, we got a letter from the warden saying that the prison had completely quieted down. It could no longer be considered a violent prison.
Why isn't this like worldwide?
Well, we're working on it. We got 15 prisons in California, a prison in Connecticut, 14 prisons in Greece, a prison in Italy.
Great.
And it's slowly expanding. During the pandemic, of course, we were shut out of in-person programming for our safety and for the safety of the people inside. Yeah. And we took the time. We spent $1 million and filmed our entire. We hired a Hollywood film crew and filmed our entire curriculum. And now it's available on Blu-ray disc to any institution in the world. And there's a fee involved, $25,000, but that comes with training. We teach you how to use it.
Right.
And you can now, if people have a local jurisdiction here in the United States or even overseas, we can show you how to start Prison of Peace at a really low cost compared to what we could have done before 2019.
Yeah. Did they give you any data on what it saved them in terms of,
no, we know it's significant because, for example, in California, there's what's known as a 115 write-up. It's like getting rid up for a behavioral problem and every 115 costs the prison somewhere between $1,500 and $2,500 just to process that thing. And we know that in the prisons or the yards where we have instituted Prison of Peace, fights and arguments have dropped precipitously, and the number of 115s issued have dropped. And so although it hasn't been measured and really can't be measured, our subjective qualitative data suggests that there's been a substantial cost savings where our program has been implemented.
Even the quantitative stuff, right? I mean, $2,500. I mean, all you need is take 10 violent incidents off your thing for a year and it pays for itself
That's right.
right away.
Well, here's the other statistic that's
Sure.
really interesting. We've had over 6,000 of our students released on parole in
Yeah.
California. Not one of them has reoffended.
And if the ones that didn't take it, what are the odds of recidivism there? Is it?
It varies
Yeah.
from 3 or 4% all the way up to 80%.
Yeah.
Depends on your age, your crime, how you're released. But the
Sure.
point is that none of our students have ever reoffended.
Wow. I'm just so happy and impressed that there's something like this, because all we hear is bad news out there, right? So it's good to have
Right.
this good news stuff to go with it.
No, this is really powerful work. And like I said, we're international now and it's growing. And we hope in 2023 and 2024, it's going to grow exponentially.
Sure. So terrific. So you've got a little gray hair like me, so this isn't the only thing you do. What else have you been doing besides this?
Well, as you said, I'm a mediator, professional
Right.
mediator. I'm a lawyer turned peacemaker. I was a
Mhm.
trial lawyer for 22 years before I went back to school and earned my master's degree in peacemaking and conflict studies. Became a mediator. I'm also an arbitrator with the American Arbitration Association.
Mhm.
I'm an adjunct law professor at the Caruso School of Law at Pepperdine University, where I teach a course in decision making under conflict.
Mhm.
And of course, I'm an author, and I do a lot of consulting and teaching and training. I teach
Right.
leadership empathy.
Oh.
How, as leaders, can you become the leader that everyone wants to follow?
Mhm.
And I teach leaders the skills that are necessary for that to happen.
Wow. Who do you admire most as a leader?
That's a great question.
I got some more.
And that's a question that I always ask my students. Tell me who and
Right.
like my students, there is nobody that I can name that I really admire as a leader.
Which
I've studied a lot of leaders.
I'm sure you have, right?
And I really don't find any that are inspiring to me, interestingly enough.
Now I'm sad again.
It's not, all it does is tells us that there's a gap
Yeah.
in skills between what it takes to be a brilliant leader and an effective leader and what people are doing right now. It's just a skill gap. And I'm determined to fill that skill gap.
It's the number one topic for consultants in the business space. I know leadership is the number one keynote topic.
Right.
But the fact that someone like with your credentials can't name one person quickly or at all,
Not easily.
Yeah.
And the skills that are they're just leaders, human beings lack some really fundamental skills. And it's just as a result of our culture, our upbringing, and our educational system. We're not taught empathy, and empathy is a skill that has to be learned and taught. We're not taught how to listen. And very few people are good critical thinkers today and good decision makers. And those are all those 3 skills or 4 skills are the foundation of all leadership.
Right. And I think with the empathy goes that cognitive, dissonance and bias we all have when we're talking to other people. We don't remove our own,
That's right. We haven't learned how to listen. Essentially, we have not learned how to listen to emotions.
Right.
And when I talk about stopping fights and arguments forever, that's what we're talking about. And imagine being a leader where there is no more conflict in your organization. Imagine being a leader where you have loyalty and trust and integrity and productivity and creativity from every single person in your organization, because you know how to listen people into existence. That's the leader that everyone wants to follow.
Right. Does it work for like small organizations, like a couple?
This is a foundational skill of life. It works for everyone. You want to, if you're a young couple with young children, you want to stop your tantrums from your 2 and 3-year-olds, learn these skills. Every parent that's ever learned and applied these skills reports that their children stop tantrums in about 3 or 4 months of constant practice.
Get this book. How about with dogs? Does it work with dogs?
Absolutely.
Oh my
gosh.
Dogs
love to be affably. They don't know what you're talking about. They just love the attention.
Okay.
I got a little border collie. I got a 16-month-old border collie female, and she loves it when I affably.
Yeah, we've got a 1-year-old new puppy, and it's like, disturbing sleep. All right. Well, this is good news. I normally say the big zinger for the end, but I'm so curious now about how do you calm an angry person forever, or however you phrase it. But let's
it's a 3-step process.
Yeah.
This is all based on brain science too, by the way. I covered this in 2005 in a very difficult conflict that I was called in to mediate, and I had no tools at my disposal. And I just had an epiphany about this. Listen to the emotions, not the words. And then in 2007, a brain scanning study came out of Matthew Lieberman's lab at UCLA that demonstrated why this skill called affect labeling works. And it shows exactly what happens in the brain when you do this. It's counter-normative and it's counterintuitive. It goes against everything we think we know about listening, which is why it's so fascinating. So the steps are this. Number one, you're confronted with an upset, angry, emotional person. The first step is to learn how to ignore their words. You absolutely are not going to listen to what they say. This does not mean that you're ignoring the person. It just means that you're going to ignore their words. You've heard it all before. There's no new news here. And for the next 90 seconds, you can afford to make everything that's coming out of their mouth white noise.
Yeah.
That's step number one. And when you're able to do that, you stop yourself from getting triggered because they're screaming at you.
Yes.
Number two, you free up bandwidth to do steps 2 and 3.
Okay.
So number one, learn how to ignore the words. Just make it noise. No meaning whatsoever. Second step, you're going to read this person's emotional data fields.
Yeah.
What we are not taught is that emotions are data and can be read just like numbers on a spreadsheet. And our brain has the innate ability to do this. It goes back, it goes into, I could go into a long talk, if you remember my graduate class, about evolutionary biology and how this skill was developed over millions of years from our predecessors. And we have this innate ability to read the emotional data that other people are projecting. And we can do it quickly and efficiently and effortlessly. And all we have to learn how to do is pay attention. So we're going to learn how to read another person's data, their emotions.
Okay.
And then the third step, and this is the secret sauce, we're going to reflect back that person's emotions with a simple you statement. In other words, we're going to tell somebody what they're feeling. So I would say something like, so Doug, man, you are really pissed off. You're frustrated. You're angry. You don't feel like you're being listened to. You don't feel like you're being heard. You're being ignored. And you don't feel appreciated or supported. And you're really worried and anxious. And you know, it's a little embarrassing because all these people are doing all this crazy stuff around you and you feel a little humiliated and you're sad because you want everybody to be great and connected, and that connection just doesn't exist. And you feel completely abandoned and betrayed. And everything's just really, really making you angry.
Yeah.
And you do that. Yeah, you felt, even though you're not angry, you felt the shit.
Right. I'm just I'm projecting a past conversation. Yeah, go ahead.
That's right. So you tell somebody what they're feeling using a you statement. You're not using active listening. You're not saying what I think you're feeling is X. That active listening crap has never worked. It never will work. And you just stop doing it. I don't know why it's still taught, but it is. And it does not work. You just tell somebody what they're feeling. And you do this until you get 4 involuntary responses. Number 1, they're going to nod their head. Number 2, they're going to say exactly, or yeah, or yeah. Number 3, they're going to drop their shoulders. And number 4, they're going to exhale in relief.
Wow.
You finally get me. And when you've done that, you have de-escalated them. It takes anywhere between 60 and 90 seconds. I don't care how angry you are. Because the beauty of it is every human brain on the planet is hardwired for this. And an angry person cannot stop the de-escalation process.
Right.
They can't stop it because it's all unconscious automatic processing. And that's what Lieberman's study showed.
Neat.
And this is a core skill that I taught before Prison of Peace, and we teach it in Prison of Peace. It's the very first skill we teach. And it's the foundation of everything that we teach in our incarcerated population. And I've taught tens of thousands of people outside of prison these skills, from school teachers to law enforcement to corporate leaders, CEOs, C-level people, to mediators and judges, lawyers, doctors, physicians, anybody dealing with people where you're dealing with an intense emotional situations. This is your go-to skill.
Wow. What was the one thing you just said about a you statement? There's a bad way and a right way to do it. It sounded very similar.
Okay, listen to this. How does it, just tell me what it feels like. And for those listening, just think about how it feels. If I say, oh, what I think you're feeling is anger. It seems to me, and it looks to me like you're really angry. Okay, now compare it to, man, you are really pissed off and angry. What's the difference?
Okay, I see that. I can feel a difference, right?
It's a huge difference.
Because that first version is like, you're a wacko. right? And the second verse is like, I get you.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And yet, in therapy and mediation,
Yeah.
everybody's active listening
I
classes,
see.
everybody teaches I statements. This is all based on a misunderstanding of the work of psychologist Thomas Gordon back in 1956. He's the one that coined the term active listening, and his work was completely misinterpreted.
Wow.
And it's been perverted ever since. And I learned active listening in my master's, in my graduate studies, mid-career, when I went back to school. That's what I was taught, and it did not work. So I had to find I had to create something different that did work. And I get paid a lot of money to go into high-powered conflicts to calm people down. And I've got to have something that will work the first time, every time, without fail.
Neat. Well, you don't have to mention names, but I'm curious, what was you said there was a big deal you're doing that was the inspiration for this?
Well, interestingly, it was a really small case involving a divorced couple.
Yeah.
They had spent $50,000 each in attorney's fees on an $18,000 problem. And classic, right?
Typical, yeah.
Classic. And
attorneys always make the money. That's right.
And the attorneys were fed up with him and said, Noll, solve this problem.
Yeah.
And this was in Santa Barbara, California. So I get them in. They present as very nicely dressed, upper middle class people, look very professional.
Yeah.
I introduced myself. I started talking. I stopped. And the moment I started talking, they both leapt up and started pointing fingers at each other and screaming vile insults and cursing each other out and just vile language. And I just sat there, whoa. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And the thought came to me, listen to the emotions. So this is what happened.
Yeah.
I started with Susan and I said, Susan, stop, sit down. Susan, John's going to tell a story. I don't want you to tell me what his story is. I want you to tell me what he's feeling. And it took her a while to get into it. Yeah. But once she started getting it, John completely calmed down. And Susan went from feeling disempowered and victimized to be completely empowered.
Amazing.
She got through. We've switched roles. John then listened to her story and told her what she was feeling through her story. When they were all done, dead silence. John puts his face in his hands and starts to sob. Oh. I mean, deep, racking sobs for about 3 or 4 minutes. Pushed the Kleenex box over. He blows his nose, wipes his eyes, looks up across the table and says, that's the first time you've listened to me in 25 years. And they settled the case in 5 minutes, got up, walked out, holding hands, and had lunch with each other. 4 hours before, had there been knives on the table, there would have been blood on the floor. And that's when I realized I had discovered something
amazing. Yeah. And it still costs 110 or whatever to solve the $18,000 problem. Yeah. Interesting. Wow. What's been the toughest situation that it didn't happen in 90 seconds? It took longer. Was it been one?
Well, the work that I do, I get called into all kinds of different conflicts. So sometimes they're very complex business problems. Sometimes they're complex personal problems. And what I've learned is that I can calm somebody down, but they're not going to stay calm down. They're going to re-escalate.
Yeah.
So my work is iterating the process. We de-escalate, then we problem solve. We de-escalate, and then we problem solve. We just slowly move the parties together until we finally get to agreement and hopefully reconciliation.
Yeah.
And the problem is solved. And the difficulty, the only difficulty that's presented is how badly do people want peace? If they don't want peace because they're hell-bent on vengeance, then it takes longer and it takes more work. But if they really do want peace, they just don't know how to get there, then the process goes a lot faster.
Any chance you could talk to some heads of state?
They're not interested.
Right.
No, they're not.
I know.
And same thing with politicians. Yeah. I write a lot about political polarization and how to have a calm conversation with the politically polarized. Yeah. You have to understand that, especially in politics, the politicians get elected on fear.
Yeah.
They get elected on scaring the base.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so they have no interest in peace. They have no interest in collaboration. They have no interest in finding common ground with people that they disagree with. They have no interest in that.
Yeah.
And as a result, they have no interest in learning these skills.
Yeah, I watched part of the State of the Union. I'm like, okay, that's enough. It's matter, and I'm not either way. There are people yelling on both sides, like, oh, you guys have no interest in doing anything.
Right. That was demonstrated last night.
Yeah, very true. Well, it's crazy.
If we want to end political polarization, it's up to us to end it. We have to learn how to listen to each other.
Right.
And we have to learn how to find common ground, even though we may have very sharp disagreements over some issues. If we listen to each other, we'll find that we have far more in common than we have in difference.
Yeah, of course. Well, a matter of fact, speaking politically, one of my friends wrote a book called The Common Sense 80%, and he did a pretty light analysis. But he said, I could put anybody in a room, no matter what their political affiliation is. If we remove the labels, they agree on 80% of everything.
I would say 90%.
Yeah, the way to get there is a little bit different, but they all agree with the same thing,
That's right.
So, yeah,
and that's been my experience too.
Right. Yeah, interesting stuff. Wow, I could talk to you for hours. I'm really I'm the very kindergarten level on the brain science stuff. I read a lot of books about it. I'm studying. I'm not degreed or anything, but I just love the everything relates back to the primitive brain. We talk about making decisions, right? So,
in my life and in my work, if I don't have empirical data and empirical research studies to support what I teach, then I just don't teach it because I get a lot of pushback. And I just tell people, all right, well, let me see your science. I'm willing to reconsider. Just show me your science.
Right.
And they almost never have science.
Yeah.
It's because what I teach is so culturally antagonistic to what they think they know, that they have a knee-jerk reaction, reactive evaluation to what I teach. And that's why I have the science to show that, yes, you think there's such thing as rationality. There's no such thing as rationality. Humans are not rational. We're 98% emotional, only 2% rational.
Right.
You can't even tell me what rationality is. Give me a definition.
That's right. Good point.
So, and the other thing that people don't understand is that, for example, in decision making, you can't even make a decision or start a decision-making process unless you have an emotional reaction that tells you there's a problem out there that needs to be solved. And in our brains, at the most basic level, when the neuronal groups are teetering, going to one way or another, the choice is going to be what's going to give me the most pleasure or what's going to avoid the most pain. Emotional.
Yeah.
Every decision is emotional.
Yep.
No such thing as rationality.
In sales long enough, I try to teach my other salespeople that, you can back up with logic, but if you don't have an emotional connection or tie with the person, it is data. It doesn't make the difference.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. So forget this idea of rationality.
Right. Very good stuff. Wow. Very good. I know you got some stuff for the listeners today. You want to give them the URL and tell them what it is?
Yeah. So I created a web page on my website. I'm going to give you the bit.ly version because it's easier. It's dougnoll.co/crow, CROWE, Doug Noll, DOUGNOLL. And on that page, you're going to get to be able to download a free ebook that describes how to affect label, how to de-escalate people, absolutely free. You can buy a copy of my book, De-Escalate. You can also go to Amazon and buy it too. And you can also purchase a copy of my De-Escalate video course, online course that teaches you how to de-escalate, which I advise that you take with another person, trusted friend. So it's a twofer, right? One person buys, both people get the benefit of it. And finally, I have a deep discount for my basic and advanced emotional competency course that teaches you how to become emotionally competent in any situation and allows you to confront any angry person with total confidence, equilibrium, and compassion, and never, ever get pushed around again by anybody. Verbally. Unless
you're a politician. Love that. Okay. Thank you very much, Doug, man. I appreciate it so much. I would love to have you back on again in a few months and talk more about this stuff. It's a great topic. So thank you very much, folks. In the show notes below, you'll see dougnoll.co/crow. Get his free stuff and get that book. Doug, thank you so much for being on the show today.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it. And that wraps up another episode of the Author Brand Show. We're going to want to take notes. And if you didn't take notes, you can click below and get them. So make sure you do. And we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.